You are now listening to the Mythic Rare Podcast with your host, Graham Pollard.
All right, welcome to a huge episode of the Mythic Rare Podcast. It's first off, the first episode we're doing in video format, and second off, it's Mythic Championship week. Week I have lovingly called the greatest week in Magic, or greatest week in sports. I even upped the ante on that. Our normal co-host Willie B is on vacation, so we have replaced him with the greatest panel of Magic experts ever assembled in a podcast, I would say. So I guess I'll just go through and introduce you guys one by one. Start off, we got an attorney by day, Magic expert by night, Captain Jamoke. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Pretty good. And next we got a man who doesn't really need any introduction. He's been killing it on YouTube recently. Psychology major in his free time. Furyk 6, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Living that psychology life. Very tiring. Very tiring.
Yeah, I believe that. And then last but not least, we got Dr. Spillikin, kind of a man after my own heart in the way that you kind of brew decks that are just more janky and fun than anything, which is kind of the spirit of this podcast. So good to have you on, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So just kick right off into it. So our goal of this episode is kind of provide some analysis for Mythic Championship V next week. I'll give some predictions at the end and get you guys out there listening. Get you ready to know what to expect and what decks are going to be good, what decks aren't. But kind of the obvious elephant in the room, the Tyrant deck is obviously banned Golos and all the other Golos formats. And it looks like this could be the last week that this deck is around if they actually go through and ban it, because they moved the whole banning announcement up till Monday, I believe, right after the tournament. So it's an interesting theme that they're going to probably, all the games are going to be mirror matches of banned Golos and you'll never see it again. But I'll start with you, Captain Jamoke. You made a deck that's kind of similar to a deck that I made that I thought was really good against banned Golos. I saw you post on Aetherhub today. It was your Karn, the Great Creator, Black Knights deck.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, have you had good success against Golos with that? And also, do you think any other decks in the field right now kind of are applying the same strategy a little bit? So
the Karn Golos deck, or the Karn Golgari Adventure, kind of mono black adventure, is, just as an explanation, it's a deck that relies on Lucky Clover, which is a 2-mana colorless artifact, which doubles any casting of an adventure spell, not the creature version. And then you've got Smitten Swordmaster, which is a 1-mana adventure spell, sorcery speed, gain 1 life for every knight you have on the field. Your opponent loses 1 life for every knight you have on the field. Between the Lucky Clovers, multiple knights in play, you're looking at a lot of burst damage and life gain for a deck. Now, the problem with Golos that a lot of people face going against it is really it goes wide, it can go fast, and it really just goes against everything. And so you have a board of these stall walls between Golos. You've got Agent and Treachery and a bunch of them. Some of them running your Rock, not too many. But you also have, the Black Sheep, Field of the Dead. A card that allows any deck to have late game advantage by converting their normal resources, which is lands, into board presence, board state. So normally if you're at late game and you're in top deck state and you top deck a land, great. Unless it's a mobilized district or something that can produce some sort of board effect, you're going to have an issue. Field of Dead circumvents that. All right. So the Golos decks take that to an extreme by accelerating mana out, putting out this wall of zombies while stealing your stuff if they're running Treachery, and also playing a bunch of stuff for free with the Golos's activated ability effect, which allows you to play, I think it was the top 3 cards of your library for no mana cost if you want to. Now you can play 1 land a turn. The reason the Smitten Swordmaster Field Lucky Clover combo is so powerful against this is because the deck inherently, but just by the nature of adventure cards, allows you to go aggro early. So you bust out a bunch of early game damage while the Golos deck is setting up their mana acceleration, either with Arboreal Grazer or Leafkin or something that's really putting it out. They've got minimal amount of board state until probably around turn 3 or 4 is where they start moving forward with speed. So you're putting incremental damage in. You're getting them down somewhere between 5 and 10 health, hopefully. And then you hit that wall, which everyone hits. You got the Calvaclade decks, they're hitting that wall. You got the Cynic Flash decks, they're hitting that wall. Anything's going to hit that wall that the Golos Fielded deck provides. What the Smitten Swordmaster combo allows you to do is you just reach past it, right? It's direct damage. So for 1 mana, you're causing a direct damage to your opponent and not worrying about this field of dead zombies. And quite frankly, you're going to be gaining life faster than your opponent. So it's a viable strategy. And I think the other strategy that could work similarly is Phoenix, and maybe even the double up strategy with the other Planeswalker that came out for the 3 mana cost. It's the red blue one. I don't know the name.
The Royal Silence.
Yeah, anything that allows you to go non-interactive on your own.
Yeah.
And something that allows you to convert the board state on your end to a solitaire game. Right? So the Smitten Swordmaster one, it's just great. 1, it's fun to play. 2, it's cheap and it takes advantage of the adventure card's ability to function as starting out with a creature or starting out with a spell and converting that into some other sort of strategy. Now you see the Golgari adventure decks that are popular, but not a lot of them are running Karn. I think Karn is a card that's extremely undervalued right now, even in the current meta, but I think it's going to be even more powerful after the rotation. 1 Karn alone, by being out there, shuts down Witch's Cauldron, right? By that being out, they can't use any activated abilities of artifacts. 2, it allows you to tutor. Now, one thing that Throne of Eldraine brought to Standard is a powerful color-oriented artifact for each color type. So you got the white one, which is for knights. You got the black one, which is the Cauldron. It's 12 mana cost, allows you to recur a creature. You got the green one, which everyone's familiar with, Henge. Red one is the Embercleave. Blue one is the draw one. So what you can do is not only do you have access for whatever colors for tutoring immediately with your Karn, but you can also, say you play 3 Lucky Clovers your main deck, you can pop a 4th one into your sideboard. You now have however many Karns you're playing, plus however many Lucky Clovers, and you're increasing your draw chance for a Lucky Clover there. You can also pop Sorcerer Spyglass in there, which is Jeskai Planeswalker counter, anything else, which is really, really strong right now. I think Karn being valued where it is right now is something people should be looking at in most decks, because every single color now has access to artifacts that are very useful. And it's not going to work in every deck, right? But it shuts down so much. And against Field of the Dead, it shuts down Golos. Golos can't use its activated ability. And what you do with it is you can also take things out which will help you tremendously for combo games. So for what I do in mine is I run 1 copy of Bolas's Citadel, right? So you pop Bolas's Citadel out, you've got even further chance to reach past that wall of zombies. You also have cool combos like a 12 mana Cauldron, which is the black one. You pop it out, you animate it with Karn, you got a 12/12
Yeah,
creature
you
out
can
there.
plus it up. Yeah, I noticed that. I thought that was a really cool bit of tech. And Dr. Spillikin and I didn't mean to cut you off there, but we were actually talking before we went on. We were very surprised that all these adventure decks aren't playing the Lucky Clover in the Mythic Champion list. I really don't. I'm pretty surprised by that because, like you were talking about, Captain Jamoke, it's copying the Smitten Swordmaster is. I found it to be the most effective way to beat Field of the Dead.
Foulmire Knight becomes a draw 1 plus whatever Lucky Clover's you out, and you've got tremendous card advantage. And the cool thing about Lucky Clover too is, say someone's playing a counterspell oriented deck. Have you ever played an adventure spell and someone's holding a counter? It triggers the copies before they can counter the spell.
Yeah.
So you're still getting it off. Murderous Rider, destroy any creature or planeswalker for 3 mana, and it doubles up. Who cares about the 2 life gain? You just got rid of a major threat on the board for 2 health. 2 health is a resource, and just make sure you don't go down to 0.
Right. Yeah, it's. I have actually died from that before, but Dr. Spilligan, like what you were saying. I mean, I'm sure I've seen some of your decks where you've been playing the Lucky Clover. Like, what do you think the reason is that some of these guys cut it out?
Honestly, I think they're scared of that, of killing themselves up against these zombie decks by just murderous ridering too many times and basically taking it to the face. Because you do it, twice, and that's already 4 or 8 health. You're down to 12. That's almost 50% of your health by your own doing.
Yeah, that can get tough sometimes. Luckily, the Sword Master can heal it back if you get it right. But
And
Yeah.
the rider itself has lifelink,
Yeah.
as does the Sword Master when you play it as a creature. But you're right, you got to be careful. It's very
Yeah.
easy to just suicide.
I think they're just scared, honestly. But they're going to a Mythic Championship, so a bit of that like pressure
Yeah.
is on them to like, hey, definitely don't kill yourself in this competition.
Yeah. And so Felix 6, I know you're a big Grixis guy, and no Grixis got to stay in the light this tournament, unfortunately. But yeah, I know it's tough. But the key card of the new Grixis build is the Fires of Invention, and we are seeing Fires of Invention get some action. Specifically, there's a couple players, I know Autumn Shed is one of them, that are putting a Fires of Invention in a Golos deck. Yep. And I believe they're doing that for the mirror, but I kind of want to hear your thoughts on that.
So I think, so to address essentially the Grixis issue, right?
Yep.
If we look at the championship as a whole, right, there are 6 total decks out of the 64 that aren't green based. Skype just did something weird to me. 3 of those are Knights decks. 1 is mono red, 1 is a sacrifice deck, and the last is a Jeskai Fires deck, which essentially still has green in it, in the sideboard at least. But for a Grixis deck, right, we just don't have the tools. And I think, unfortunately, so much of the metagame, essentially, and it seems weird to say, green is too strong.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just the field that is the issue, right? When the mana bases are so poor, and I do think that right now we do have pretty poor mana bases. When the mana bases are so poor, green's ability to make sure we are still hitting our land drops, making sure we can still actually color fix, means that it is necessarily going to be kind of the top dog. I think that actually, if we had better access, if different 3-color combinations had better access to wider mana, we would be able to see more interaction going on, because these other color decks would be able to still fight against these green decks. Specifically looking at the Golos deck that has Fires of Invention in it, I think it's helpful for that deck insofar as they're going to be able to potentially continue to get, be able to play a Golos or a board wipe and a Golos in like double up fashion. But I think that just the fact that we're only seeing 1 of these in the entirety of the 64 really shows that there's no need to add these frills, right? The Fires of Invention in a deck where you're already ramping, where you are already able to activate Golos and get these free spells potentially. It just seems like it's kind of odd. And I'm trying to find the actual Golos list.
I posted it in chat if you're able to see it.
There it is. Yeah, it's essentially there, and I think this is exactly why it's there, because of Fae of Wishes, right? And if you're looking at the Grixis decks, what I end up doing is I have Fae of Wishes, right? That's the main reason now that I'm playing Fires, because you're going to be able to go into your sideboard, get some good things, and then bring those in to the main deck where you're going to have these first game issues, right? After sideboard, obviously there's different things, but if you know that the field is going to be dominated by one deck, being able to have access to your sideboard in game 1 is very helpful. And the fact that Fae of Wishes costs 4 means that you're going to want to be able to play that and something else, right? If you're just playing a Fae of Wishes against some decks, that single turn is going to be enough to just start going back into your favor, kind of bringing that game back around. But if you're able to just go, you already have Fires of Invention out, you get Fae of Wishes, or you use Fae of Wishes, and you can immediately use whatever it is you're looking for. If you're up against another Golos deck, which you probably are going to be, you can use that Fae of Wishes, immediately go get Unmoored Ego, and just get rid of their stuff, right? And the fact there were a few decks, I went through and I briefly looked at all of the decks that are included, that were running main deck Unmoored Ego.
Yeah, I was actually just going to say that. That's like a total just fuck it attitude, I think, but I kind of like it.
I mean, it's interesting. I love Unmoored Ego, the card. I think it's absolutely hilarious. But when you have to have sideboard cards consistently in the main deck, I think that really shows that there's a problem, right? Some of the blue decks, some of the Simic food decks, are running main deck Disdainful Stroke. Technically, that card, like in a vacuum, is not great in game ones. It only hits certain things past a certain point. Against, especially considering the fact that we have so many good low cost planeswalkers, right? Disdainful Stroke is going to miss all that early game, right? But the fact that Golos decks are so prevalent means that not only are they fine running these in the main deck, they essentially have to. They have to be able to say, all right, on turn 4 even, maybe even 3. I don't know exactly how the ramp situation works perfectly for Golos, like the God Hand, but at least on like turn 4, my opponent might be playing a Golos. I need to be able to deal with that, right? And I think it's an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really surprised by the 4 copies of Disdainful Stroke when I saw it at first. It does make sense, though, but it kind of does give an edge to some of the aggro decks that I want to talk about later, because some of them aren't even playing any cards over 4 mana in their entire deck, except for Embercleave, I guess. But one thing, just going back to the Fires of Invention real quick, what do you think about the chance for glory in the sideboard there? Because that honestly was one of the coolest pieces of tech that I saw when I was looking at it.
I think that chance for glory is it's a bit of a meme, but the reason personally, I play the Fave, which is Fires of Invention in my Grixis build, and I might end up going towards chance for glory as well. But the reason that this card's able to be played is that the majority of games you're not going to use it, right? The vast majority, but the ability to get that is important. And in a deck where maybe you have a huge Hydrocrisis, but your opponent is like facing you down with some nonsense. They're running Kenrith. Kenrith is able to also dome things by giving stuff haste. Yeah, just like, I'm going to play this giant Hydrocrisis, give it haste, hit you, right? If you need that one more turn, which you can do in a bunch of different stupid ways in this deck, being able to say, okay, this turn I'm just going to live. I'm fine. Right?
Yeah.
The ability to do that, I think, is why it's there. I don't actually think Chance for Glory is necessarily the best card to be put in the sideboard. But I think for this deck it's probably fine because you have the ability to like go that. For what it's worth, I don't love Chance for Glory because you could just die.
Right. Yeah, it's a big risk, but
it's a huge risk, and the thing is, right, like if you have the mana, which these decks run, almost 50% of these decks are lands, which is just madness to me. But if you have enough mana, you can Fave Wishes, immediately get it, use it whenever you need it, right? But that's not always going to be the case, which once again is kind of why you have Fires of Invention. But you kind of need the foresight to know when to get it first. And it just seems like, for me at least, it's a lot easier to just go and get like Bolas.
Sure. Yeah. So let's go around quickly.
Published, I think that'd be a different story. But because they're published, it's not really that surprising to the opponents.
Yeah.
That's a big part of why it's good.
Yeah. So sorry, just going around quickly. Head-to-head, Fires of Invention deck versus straight up Golas. Who wins?
Golas wins. The reason so at least from my experience, playing so many iterations of Bolas, like I have a notepad of all of my Bolas games, because Bolas is the only deck I really care about right now. I've tried vastly different versions of Bolas. A lot of them at this point have had Fires of Invention, and the main issue I see, at least with that, is even though you're going to be able to potentially get ahead in the situation, right? You still need to have a way to maintain card advantage and maintain board presence. Golos can do that easily, right? The fact that they're able to just play a land, they can be in top deck mode, and a top deck land is still a free 2/2. And they're still able to use any of the special lands that they have. I know some of them are running the castle, the blue castle, but I know not all of them are. But you're still able to just use those, right? Whereas in a Fires of Invention deck, at least in the Grixis versions I play, you can be in situations where they just have a bunch of lands, and you didn't draw your Field of the Dead, you didn't draw your Fave Wishes to go get, or not Field of the Dead, sorry, Ritual Soot. You can't go get your Ritual Soot. And even if you can, sometimes they just have Golos, and then you're like, okay, now I need a ritual to deal with the entire board, except for the Golos, which I have to kill on a 1-to-1 basis. And if they untap with that Golos, they're going to drown you in card advantage. The fact that with Fire's Invention you can't play things at instant speed, for what it's worth, doesn't matter all that much because the Fairy Menace is still around. But yeah, it's and I actually don't like that we refer to them as Golos decks, right? Because at the end of the day, they're Field of the Dead decks.
Yeah.
Right. If we still had the ability to easily blow up that land, it would be much less of an issue. Right.
Golos is just easier to say, to be honest. That's
true,
that's the only
true.
reason I do it. But.
Right. But if they banned Golos, we would still see Field of the Dead.
Sure.
Right. I don't think that's really something that is
100%.
debated.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's unfortunate that there are a ton of powerful cards and interactions in Eldraine, and they're drowned out by the fact that we can't deal with a land. Right. We have Unmoored Ego to get rid of it beforehand. We have Casualties of War. I play that in my sideboard because I pretty much have to. I'm sure there are others, but in the main deck, like I think I saw that someone was playing Tectonic Rift in their sideboard.
Yeah, it's not Tectonic Rift. It's the other 4 mana. I forget the name of it.
Rabbling.
It is Tectonic? Okay.
Yeah. That is insane to me, right? That an aggro deck has to play a 4 mana land destruction spell because of the metagame. It's strange. And I'm not saying that Wizards need to reprint Stone Rain. I think that would lead to much worse issues, but I've seen people who are in favor of leaving Field of the Dead alone, and I just can't help but disagree because there's no interplay, right? I want interplay in my Magic. I want to be able to say I lost this game because my opponent made good choices and I made bad choices. I don't want to lose a game because my opponent was able to get a Field of the Dead as soon as they hit their seventh land, and I was not able to wipe their board for 6 turns in a row. There have been games where I have wiped my opponent's board 5-6 times and have still lost to zombies.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's just so difficult to deal with an on the board land right now because we don't have Field of Ruin anymore, and it's like, why?
Yeah. So Chance, I'll move this one over to you. Regular Golos versus Fires of Invention Golos. Who do you got?
Yeah, definitely Fires. I actually like that deck. I was actually going to mention that myself after he got done. That's a deck that I'm really, really excited for. And I'm not a huge fan of the Field of the Dead. I don't like the fact that they're so prevalent, but I do enjoy zombies, and I enjoy going wide just as a strategy in general. So seeing it as a dominant strategy hasn't been the most upsetting thing for me, which may be counter to a lot of people's opinions on it. Don't get me wrong, I hate when the meta is like, what is it, 30%, 40% goal?
It's like 40 or something like that.
Yeah, something crazy. I hate when the meta is shifted any way too hard. But if it's going to be shifted too hard, this is not the worst thing ever. I still remember the Esper days, and that was terrible for me. Like,
I'm the same way, and I kind of think that because we both like playing the jank decks, I feel like Esper was just so much harder to play when you're doing a jank deck up against that one than Field of the Dead, in my opinion. I can see you reacting.
Jank decks, I would agree with that, but I much prefer playing against Esper.
Yeah,
because I feel like there's direct counterplay to it, right? Whereas a super aggressive deck can destroy, just run over an Esper deck. But with the Golos decks, the fact that they have the early Arboreal Grazers, and they're going to be able to get that blockade, like you were saying, it's so difficult for you to be able to just dome through them.
Yeah, I agree to a degree, I guess. Field of the Dead to me is it's not going to kill you turn 3, right? It's not going to kill you turn 4. Granted, it's well on its way some games because of the ramp. I just disliked Esper being able to control you from turn 1 having Spell Pierce, and then turn 2 having, Negate, and then turn 3 having Sinister Sabotage. And it's just like, oh, this couldn't be worse. I'm sorry, couldn't be worse.
Yeah. Captain Jamoke, I'll throw over the same question for you, and then I'll also add on top of it. So head-to-head, Fires of Invention version versus regular Golos, who do you got? And then I'll also add, if you could take any deck in the field versus Golos, what do you think has the best advantage?
Okay, so the inner Jamoke in me wants to say the Fires Invention, because that's awesome. However,
Right.
I don't think the consistency is quite there compared to what is available by just sticking to the tried and true. So I'm in line with what was already said in that regard. That said, Fires of Invention can allow for some very interesting things with Field of Dead decks. You're going to be able to put out a lot of mana really quick, which is one of the kind of bottlenecks for Fires of Invention decks. You're limited to the amount of mana you have on the board. Right? So if you have Fires of Invention that come down on turn 4 after you drop your land, you're only going to be able to play something at maximum cost for mana. Now, Field of Dead decks, they're going to have 8, 10, 12, 15 mana on the board pretty quickly, mid-game, or what would be considered mid-game normally. So this allows them to play stuff like Agent of Treachery. I don't think it's been explored as much as it could go. I don't think the current Fires of Invention lists are really where they could be, but I think Fires of Invention with Golos is something to look out for. That said, with the current lists that have been submitted in Mythic Championship tournament, I don't think Fires of Invention is the right thing to place your money on. That said, variance could happen, and I'm not hedging right now. I'm just saying, no. Well, I guess I am hedging. I'm hedging, but
No, that's all right.
I think the Fires of Invention, while cool, it increases the variance of the deck play too much, and I don't think the deck is refined enough to include Fires of Invention over other things, because if you're using your Fave Wishes, you're probably going to want to grab something else. Most of the time, I would rather take an Onward Ego rather than Fires of Invention if I'm using my Fave Wishes. Best deck to beat Field of Dead right now, based off of everything submitted, and I'm going right through there. I'd have to say Field of Dead.
Fair enough.
Agent of
Good
Treachery
answer.
is an immediate answer to Field of Dead, but a serious answer would probably be the Adventure deck that maybe 2 of them submitted. I know at least one of them was submitted by Takeshi Sino. He has one in here. Now, he runs 4 Lucky Clovers. He's got 4 Once Upon a Time. He's got something very similar to what I run myself when I'm playing. He doesn't run the Karns. I think that's something people, again, are overlooking. But
Is that
I
the
think that's
Celestia one? Sorry. Or is that Golgari?
This is Golgari. I'm going to post
Okay.
it in the Skype chat here so you guys can look at it, see what I'm referring to. But this is a deck that runs a lot of stuff that leads to consistency. Other than the Flaxen Intruder, which is a great thing to get rid of Golos, by the way, you're looking at a very consistent 4 of deck with a 20 land base. That's the only thing that I'd pop that up to 22.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think the Smitten Swordmaster of everything submitted, and I'll stick by it, is probably the best bet, because you can get in fast and then you can go long game. But we'll find out which Field of Dead deck wins come the end of the championship. I think if either Golos or Field of Dead gets banned, I think it's way too early. I think there's plenty of answers out there. I think they've been undiscovered, and I think it's just too rash at this point. And I agree that it's cooler than Esper. Sorry, I disagree with the one that Esper's more fun to play against. But this is something that's awesome. You don't see this kind of deck play too often. Before Field of Dead came out, we had a meta that was just normal, but not stuff that you see in Modern or even further back than that. This is stuff that you're seeing in Standard right now that you normally reserve for a different format, which is awesome. It should be savored because it's going to rotate out eventually anyway.
Yeah, I think it's a foregone conclusion it's getting banned, unfortunately, just because they moved the announcement up. But this is just a total aside when you guys were talking about the Fires of Invention. Did you guys know there's a card someone played this against me, and I swear I didn't know this existed until like 2 days ago. But there's one card in Standard that totally shuts down Fires of Invention. It's like a white-blue creature, and it's a counter. If its ability is whenever you play a card without playing its mana cost, counter that card. Yeah,
Lavinia,
I totally didn't know. Yeah, I totally didn't know that card existed until yesterday. So, I mean, no one's playing it in the tournament.
Lavinia, Azorius Renegade.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, so Chance, I'll throw that back to you. I kind of want to move on to some of the more interesting decks in the tournament. So if you're looking at some of these aggro decks, we got Gruul, we got some of the Mardu Knight ones. Do you think those got a realistic shot of being consistent enough to take down the big boys?
Yes and no. I think they'll catch one or two slips, but as far as like actually winning, no. The mono red will definitely catch some people with their pants down, but consistency's sake says no. They're gonna get beat out. They're gonna get swept.
Yeah, the one mono red deck surprised me. Not gonna lie.
But it might be able to take down one or two Field of the Deads again if it just catches the right play.
Yeah, I'll ask you the same question, Fearix 6. Of all the aggro decks, do you think they've got a shot, and which one?
I mean, it's real difficult because of the ability for the field decks to deploy those barricades early on. I think I'm inclined to agree. Let's see, just double check. Oh, interesting. The actual normal Knights list don't seem to be playing the Drain Boy. I'm a little surprised by this, to be honest. I think the Draining Knight is very helpful at dealing with them, but you know, I think I would have to give it to. I think I would have to give it to Gruul aggro over Knights or Mono Red or anything like that, just because they can have relatively fast, relatively large things, and a lot of them go overhead. You know, they have Skargan, they have Sarkin, they have the ability to have, you know, Questing Beast is not going to get blocked out by a bunch of the dweebs. So I think that might have a decent case. Also Skargan can allow them to ping down their opponent. So that's decent. Maybe you could see some situations where the Sacrifice deck can get some in there, because they're a deck that's also not really playing necessarily to the normal like combat, so they don't necessarily get walled by them. I think my biggest issue with the Sacrifice deck is the fact that they're also going to get run over by a zombie horde. Yeah. You can slowly chip away at them, but at some point they're going to have a bunch of tutus, and you're not.
Yeah, that's by far my favorite deck in the tournament, but I'm not sure it's good enough, unfortunately. But I love that deck. It's been so much fun to play. The key tech in that deck that I think a lot of the pro players are overlooking this from podcasts I've heard of is Claim the Firstborn. That card is insane because like half the field is playing Hydroid Krasis, and it can take over Hydroid Krasis, swing in for, you know, upwards of 8 to 10 damage sometimes, depending on how big the Hydroid Krasis can get. Then you can sacrifice it with Witch's Oven. So basically for 1 mana, you can swing in for 10 damage, kill their best creature, and create a food token, which is pretty good. Inconsistent, but pretty good. That's who I'm rooting for, at least. I'm not sure how well he's going to do, but keeping the fingers crossed.
I wonder if that's like So I don't know how many people are going to watch the championship this time, because of how much there are going to be so many Golos mirrors.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of people talking about that.
Yeah, it's like I don't know how long that's going to be interesting to watch. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm rooting for all of the non-Golos decks. Not necessarily because I like them more. For what it's worth, I love the Sacrifice deck. Witch's Oven and Cauldron Familiar are meme-tastic. I love Aristocrat style things. I think it's pretty cool. But I'm rooting for them not necessarily because I think they're better decks or cooler decks, but because I don't want to see nothing but Golos mirrors. Right. I think that over anything in terms of like power level or things like that is why field in some way should be dealt with. I have heard some people talk about maybe Wizards needing to, for like the first time ever, limiting a card in standard instead of outright banning something, but limiting it to 1 or 2. And I don't think they'll do that. And I think it would be a bad precedent if they did that. But I think it would help if they took that option. Like, then you can still play these Golos decks, but you're not going to be able to have like 3 Field of the Deads out at a time where you're just top decking lands.
Here's an idea I had. This is probably a horrible idea, and definitely tell me if it's a horrible idea if it is. But what if they amended the card to, instead of like 7 lands, 9 lands or something like that? I'm pretty sure they've never done that before, and it's probably a horrible idea, but it would slow it down by a turn or 2 probably, which could make a big difference.
It'd kill the card.
They
Yeah,
also
think so.
try not to do Functionalerrata anymore. Because then you'd have some people who are like going to F&M for the first time, and instead of people being like, oh yeah, that card's banned or whatever, they sit down, they play with the card, and it just doesn't work how it's printed.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
people,
that makes sense. Yeah.
people are like, nah. So Wizards tries not to do Functionalerrata, but I think I agree. I think it would just kill the card. So then, like, maybe this should have been 8 as like kind of a middle ground, but I think this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, that it is green in general that's an issue, because like you can't really look at a deck by itself. There are technically answers to Field of the Dead, but it's kind of the meta of the metagame, and that other colors are just worse than playing green. One of the best things that green does is ramping, what is going to make it so that even if you're top decking all these extra lands you're playing, what makes that good? It's Field of the Dead, right? Yeah.
One thing I'm kind of surprised about is that I'm not seeing more Fae of Wishes in general decks. Like, it seems like such a good main board card just in general if you're running into like one heavy set variance of a deck and then a bunch of outliers, right? Because that's what the rest of the decks are for the most part. It's like here or there, but I feel like Fae of the Wishes would be fantastic for dealing with the outliers as well as still allowing you to work with Golos.
I think the main issue is just cost. Like, the Golos decks can ramp pretty high pretty fast, but they don't generate like free mana. Like, the closest thing I can think of when I think of Fae Wishes, I think of Maximize Acquisition, right? And when that deck was played, it was played where you had Cabal Stronghold, right? You're producing these ridiculous amounts of mana in single turns, with technically few lands, right? So you didn't have to modify your deck all that much. But with Fae of Wishes, right, you don't necessarily have that same situation. So you don't want to be in a situation where you can only get something out of your sideboard. Well, I mean, you can play it as a 1/4, but you never want to do that, right?
Well, up against the like more aggro decks, 1/4 wouldn't be bad just as a body, right? Instead of taking that damage to the face, you at least have the 1/4. Don't worry about paying the 4 first. Just get the body down. That's really the reason why I like it, is because going up against the aggro matches, to whereas normally, yeah, you have a 4 mana card that's like dive and get something else that you can play next turn, which you may be dead by. You also have this 1/4 blocker that blocks out, all these 1/1s coming from Cavalcade or the Footlight Fiends or whatever it may be.
That's a good point. So Captain Jamoke, there's one interesting deck we haven't talked about so far I want to get to, which is Ken Yukihira's Mardo Knights deck. And if you haven't checked this out, I totally overlooked it the first time I saw it. It's kind of a standard Mardo Knights deck, but then he really goes off the radar or off the beaten path by playing 4 copies of Rotting Registar in the main board and 4 copies of Endercleave. So is he onto something here, or is this just too memey to actually work?
So I think the synergy is a little bit difficult when you're looking at both Regisaur and Embercleave, because Regisaur is going to reduce your hand, right? So you've got to be playing a deck that's inherently aggressive, where your hand is going to be reduced anyway. Then you've got other cards in this deck which aren't all 1-drops. So in Ken's deck, he's running 4 Acclaim Contenders, he's running 4 Black Lances, he's running 4 Inspiring Veterans, and he's running 4 Rotting Regisaurs, in addition to 4 Embercleaves, which is a legendary artifact. The problem that I foresee with this deck, while it's awesome and I'm going to build it and play it, is One, you're going to end up with dead draws from multiple Ember Cleaves early, because if you don't have the creatures out there, that Ember Cleave is sitting in your hand doing nothing. Two, you're going to get a Rotting Regisaur out as your only creature, and that's turn 3 mana. Your turn 1 is going to be a 1-drop. Your turn 2 is probably going to be a 2-drop or a 1-drop. I like the idea. I think that the curve is a little bit off. Regisaur, maybe spawn a Mayhem instead. It functions similarly as a 3-drop in a deck that can consistently put out damage. And then you've got an attacker, 3 mana, without the discard effect. So without the discard effect of the Rotting Regisaur, you're keeping your hand open for putting more creatures out. And you can refill it with your acclaimed contenders. But Regisaur comes out, what's the acclaimed contender going to do? It doesn't trigger off Regisaur, and it's another 3-drop, so something's going to get discarded. I think it's a very cool idea. I think it's not quite there yet.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing I want to add, one thing I noticed about this deck, and this is incredibly inconsistent, but Rotting Regisaur, you equip that with the Lance, the 2-mana equipment, and then you equip that with Embercleave. That's 20 damage total on the board for one attacker. I kind of think that's why he just submitted the deck, just in case he could pull that off. It would be an awesome move.
Now, if Rotting Regisaur was a knight, it'd be a different story.
Right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's a dinosaur, but okay. So Embercleave is a card that I think you have been building with Chance, and it's in a lot of the Gruul decks. Do you think that given the trample and double strike is enough, or is it just too inconsistent to actually pull stuff off?
No, it's fun, and it'll get you where you want to go if you're not in a Mythic Championship. It can get you to Mythic ranking, but as far as winning a whole championship where you have so much other stuff, it like Jamoke said, it's way too inconsistent. It's fun, I'm not trying to discourage people from playing it that are competitive. It's still fun, and it'll still get you there. But yeah, not a main scene kind of card.
Yeah,
it's like playing Divine Visitation. Fun. Sure, it has a lot of power, but realistically, you should dial it back.
Yeah, I agree. So there's one Gruul deck that it's Gabby Spartz's that I want to get your guys' opinion on, because this one's a little bit different. It's not really that much different, but I heard on a podcast Brian Braun-Duin, who is an MPL player, say, in his opinion, the best single card against Golos was the 5-mana Sarkhan the Masterless, because except for Planner Cleansing, all of the other sweepers they have don't touch it, and unless you have Teferi down and can hit it at instant speed. And Gabby Spartz is playing 3 of those in the sideboard. Do you guys think that she's on anything there, or is still the Gruul, the downfall of the Gruul are still going to be plaguing her?
I think evading Field of the Dead is whenever you come to an answer, it's definitely not your first one. That's why a lot of people are just like, yeah, I'll just sweep them all. So I think it'll take some people by surprise, and I like the idea of just flying over as opposed to let me figure out a way to clear all these people off. So I definitely think it's innovative. As far as effective, again, it's too inconsistent.
Yeah, that's
I don't know
where I'm at too.
A lot of these decks, and I hate to say it, but a lot of these decks, they're not. There's an interesting thing about them, or there's an interesting twist, but there's nothing like really new that I saw from the list, which kind of surprises me. Like Jamoke said, I feel like there's more answers out there than what people are like giving credit to the meta, simply because they've already seen X amount of decks and they've seen them do so well, and so they've just sort of locked themselves in on this.
Right. Yeah. So the last deck I want to touch upon before we get our predictions is the deck that the Czech powerhouse teams are playing, which is the Bant Ramp team. So I was very surprised by the selection, to be honest, because these guys are known for coming up with the most innovative decks in Standard. They're the ones that came up with the Kenrith combo deck, kind of out of nowhere, last Standard. Most people credit them with the original Bant the original Field of the Dead Scape Shift deck, and also with the Command the Dreadhorde deck. So I saw this one, and I was kind of just like, I don't really get it. It just really doesn't seem that good to me. But I'll throw it over to you, Fearx6, just get your opinion on this. Am I missing something?
I think in general it has a lot of power because of the deputy detention, right? And I think that's one of the things that was talked about in the Mythic Championship deck article, is that deputy detention, because it just hits permanents or non-land permanents, you can use it against these fringe decks and still have it be useful. The fact that it has 3 toughness is great against those super aggressive decks, but the ability to just have a creature that comes down, wipes the board of zombies, and then can later be, bounced with Teferi or something like that. I think that's very helpful. It also does a decent job of chump blocking a zombie if you need, if they have one of these. So you're not going to be losing too much of that early on. And then you still have the ability to go kind of big with things like Nissa, your Hydrocrisis. You can start turning food tokens into 3/3s and whatnot. I think it's definitely decent. I would have liked to see, hilariously, kind of what you were saying, Chance. I think this deck, over some of the other ones, I would have liked to see a couple of main deck fairies, right? I think in this deck you would be able to get some granted, you'd be able to cast some of those, and go get your sideboard Ashiok or throw an Unmoored Ego in there and get that. I think this deck, it'd be pretty helpful. But
yeah, sure. So kind of one of the main goals of that deck is that it gets to turn 3 Nissa very quickly. It plays a lot of small ramp cards. But I want to ask you, Captain Jamoke, do you think a turn 3 Nissa against a deck that plays so much sweepers, and when you play a sweeper, it'll just get rid of your lands, do you think that that's really, the best top end you can be going for?
No, I don't. And I think it's even more dangerous with Murderous Rider out there.
Sure.
You're really, really putting yourself out there for just closing out the game against yourself. You've got a lot of cards that to sweep the board, like you said. Not necessarily played, all of them, but a lot of them are. And with Fey of Wishes being so prevalent in these Bant decks, you're really cutting it close. You're gambling. And it's, Mythic Championship, I'd say it's pretty high stakes in terms of Magic the Gathering. So I think playing Nissa right now is something that needs to be very, very carefully considered when you look at all the decks that are prepared to deal with zombie tokens.
Yeah,
because they're
totally
probably
agree.
going to be able to deal with the elemental land tokens as well.
Yeah, I could not agree more with that. And yeah, it's interesting because these guys are so innovative, and I feel like I'm not in a position to be critiquing their deck building because of their resume.
And I got to disagree with that Feel the Dead Golos, them claiming that. I linked an article earlier in here. I'd like to think that idea was developed a few weeks before they came out with their list.
Okay. Yeah, it might be. I just remember reading that in an article somewhere.
Self promotion there.
Oh, okay? There you go. I like it. All right. Is there any? Yeah, I guess we haven't talked really about the second most popular deck, the Simic Food deck. This deck to me kind of seems like similar in a way to the Bant ramp decks, but it's just Simic, and it's kind of the same strategy basically. Get Oko, get Nissa out. Do you guys think that this deck is built to go up against Golos, or do you think they put this where it's got a good chance against Golos, and then in their mind a good chance against the rest of the field, or a better chance against the rest of the field, I should say?
I think this has a fantastic chance against the rest of the field. I just don't know how well this is going to deal with Golos. And the main reason for that is by not having the white, you don't have easy, consistent answers, continual answers against these hordes of zombies. Right? They have the main deck Disable Stroke. They have the ability, to Wicked Wolf and kill a zombie here. Voracious Hydra kill a zombie there. Agent Treachery can steal one of their fields, but they don't even have the Teferi to bounce their own Agent of Treachery back to steal the second field, to steal the third field. Because these are cards that are going to keep coming out, and I think that this deck can and probably will just be overrun too quickly.
I like it.
Yeah, I don't think Simic Food will end up I think it'll give a fair run for its money, but again, I don't think it'll end up topping the charts just because like Jamoke said earlier, it's relying too heavily on those top end beasts that can get cleared out way too easily, and then like Thyric said, it doesn't have the means to deal with the go wide strat from what I'm seeing here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not too excited about this deck. That's kind of why I forgot about it until now, I guess. But let's get everyone's predictions. I want one deck, and then if you want to throw out a name of a player, you're more than welcome to. We'll start with you, Jamoke. Who do you got?
Okay, so 2 people I'd like to recommend. First one is MTG Arena Meta. He organizes tournaments for Aetherhub. He's done so much work for them. Fantastic. And I say he, I think there's a couple people, but the main person that I've communicated with there is Steve over there. And Steve has weekly tournaments now sponsored by Wizards of the Coast. Aetherhub, if you go to their tournament section, 10,000 gems weekly now up for grabs. That's $50 American, pretty much. That's a lot of cards for playing an afternoon. It was one of the first tournaments, if not the first tournament after Throne of Eldraine was released. These lists were published by playing in the Aetherhub tournaments. We had people from Aetherhub.com published on MTG Top 8. We had other sites using these Aetherhub tournaments as the meta shapers. So if you want to get in there and win gems and shape the meta, perfect place to do it. Second person is Chloroform MTGA. Chloroform MTGA. For those that he just started streaming, but you may be familiar with the name. He was a big white weenie player a few sets ago. He's a member, very active member of my Discord, and great deck builder, fantastic person. I wish I could name everyone else that I want to, but I can't. And then I forgot what the other thing that you wanted me to reference was.
Prediction on who's going to win the tournament. But thank you for bringing up the Aetherhub tournament too, because I was actually going to get to that. So. Definitely check that tournament out. But
one deck for who wins.
One deck, and then if you want to throw out a name, you can definitely throw out a name.
Okay, so Frank Karsten's not playing, so I can't recommend him. Otherwise, I would. A lot of great players, but who I would personally go for is I'd say either Takeshi Seno, based off the Golgari list, because I think it's very nicely positioned, even if it doesn't have everything that I would play in there. And I'm not the end-all be-all with my Karn thing. But the other one is Martin Juza. So Martin Juza is playing a Bant Food deck. And I know Bant Food is not highly, rated against Golos, and I wouldn't rate it either, but it's Martin Juza playing. So, I mean, whoever's going against him is going to be in for trouble.
Sound like you stole your pick, Furyk 6, but I'll let you go next.
He did. I think statistically speaking, the easy answer is Golos is going to win, right? One of the random Bengals decks. But I think Yuza's ramp deck I think is going to have some substantial. Martin's a great player, and I think the reason I like his list honestly is because it doesn't have main deck disable strikes. But no, I think the fact that he's able to use Agent and Deputy, I think those are going to be things that are going to help him out against the Field of the Dead decks. It really does. I think a lot of his success will be based on how he handles that Nissa in the face of the potential board wipes. And that essentially is, I'm not necessarily saying that Bent Ramp is going to be great. I think it's Yuza who is going to have that experience to know when he needs to start going in.
I like it. So 2 for Yuza. All right, who you got, Chance?
I'm actually going to go with Leverado. I like the Golgari Adventure, and it's it's the pick that I want to win. I don't know if it will win, but it's what I'm going for. And then for what I think will win, I can't say Golos just because I can't,
Totally agree.
Well, let me rephrase that. I can't say traditional Bont Golos because I'm not a fan or a supporter. But I do really like Autumn Burchett's Fires of Invention. And I know we already talked about how inconsistent it can be. I'm all for inconsistency and just having fun with it. So maybe it'll pull through.
Yeah, good pick. So for me, I'm going 100% with my heart, not my head. I'm going with Miguel da Cruz Samoas. I totally apologize if I butchered that name. Rakdos Sacrifice, baby, all the way. Wrote an article on it. And even though I'm saying I'm going with my heart, not my head, if you end up winning, that was strictly my head, not my heart. So I just will throw that out there now. So when one of us is right, we'll be able to gloat to the rest of the world that we nailed it before everyone. But yeah, definitely want to say good luck to all the competitors out there. And it's going to be hopefully a good weekend, hopefully not totally filled with hour-long mirror matches.
I'm really hoping that in the first seedings aren't going to be the fringe decks against each other, because then like they are literally forced to just like be out. And like, no, I want as many Golos decks to be eliminated early, and it's not because I dislike the Golos decks. It's because I want to see interesting things.
100%.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they did that, though, because I feel like they get more viewers the later it gets into the rounds, right? So why not go ahead and knock out all the long decks against each other?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's random in the beginning.
It should be. Should be.
Yep.
Hopefully.
Yep. All right, guys. This was definitely an awesome show. Great getting your opinions and everything, and appreciate you all coming on.